Bernard Turner, but here they call me Dr. T. I'm associate professor of social entrepreneurship and director of the Center for Social Entrepreneurship here at Belmont University in Nashville, Tennessee. June 1st, this past June 1st, marked 13 years. I'm proud because I've never been on a job in my professional career, more than 5.5 years. So I guess I'm here to stay for a few more years. Oh, wow. Uh, Let me just say, when I moved to Nashville from Cleveland, Ohio in 1986, and one of my first job was the Nashville Minority Business Development Center, and I helped minority businesses get small business administration loans. I was a business management consultant, did all of that. But we had funding, a cooperative agreement, like a grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce, Minority Business Development Agency. Well, our 3 or 5 year funding was ending, and so we had to go up for a competitive renewal. And they didn't give it to us. They gave it to an organization that never ran a center like this because they have centers like this all over the United States. So my executive director, they forced, the regional office made the recommendation. They took it all the way up to DC, and DC overturned it. We lost by 1 point. Yeah, right, right, right. So I was like, okay, now I need to look for a job. Our United Way here in Nashville at the time was looking for a government relations specialist. 7 interviews over 6 weeks, and some of those multiple interviews. Then the sixth interview, they said they would change the job to grant writing specialist. I'm like, huh? Okay. So that's how I became United Way, our local United Way's first grant writing specialist ever. Uh, Needless to say, I was only there 3 years because the first grant I wrote, and I still got it. I use it in my basic and advanced, my basic grant writing workshop I do through the Center for Nonprofit Management here in Nashville. Um, it was $40,000, and it was to the from the Gannett Foundation, who was and we our local newspaper was a Gannett newspaper, Tennessean. I remember my boss saying, Bernard, I don't been on a job 2 or 3 weeks. She said, we need this grant to make the United Way campaign this year. I was like, okay, I can do it, new grant writer, full energy. Uh, we got the grant. It was $40,000 and it came in Gannett stock certificates. So everybody out there, sometimes you don't get cash, they'll give you stock certificate and stuff like that. That's how I got started at United with grant writing. And then what happened was um, we just completed a needs assessment. And HIV and AIDS was like in the top 5 needs in the community. Well, there was an opportunity from an organization called the National Community AIDS Partnership based in DC that the Ford Foundation started as their domestic HIV/AIDS program. So we had an opportunity, Nashville had an opportunity to apply, but usually they would do community foundations. We had just started a community foundation, Middle Tennessee. They wasn't going to do it. And then we thought one of the local foundations that they didn't want to do it. So Dr. Lydia Cox, my boss at the time, the director of community initiatives, said, we're going to do this. HIV and AIDS is an issue here. It's 1990. We got to do something. And I wrote that grant and it was funded. And they started out with 8, what we call community partners. We didn't call them grantees. I like the community partners as well. The Ford Foundation picked the first 8, and they were big foundations. But then United Ways got involved. So it was Charlotte, Kansas City, Nashville, and Virginia, the big city in Virginia. I can't think of it right now. Those were the 4 United Ways that got involved in 1990 in HIV and AIDS. Everybody else was no. So after we became a community partner, guess what? They were looking for a senior program officer at the National Community AIDS Partnership, NCAP. So I went there, did that for a couple of years, met people working in foundations and everywhere, came back to Nashville. When you move to DC, they should tell you, and they did not tell me I'd be traveling 60% of the time on the job. I went everywhere. So when I got there, we had 21 community partners, grantees in 16 states. When I left 20 months later, I wanted to leave after 6 months, but Lydia Cox wouldn't let me. We had 39 community partners and 33 sites. So that comes. So I came back to Nashville, went to work at Meharry Medical College as director of corporate and foundation relations. Then I went to Vanderbilt School of Nursing, director of grant development. Then I went to a couple of years. I went to Memphis to get back in minority and women business development. Came back to Nashville as the development director for the Comprehensive Care Center, which was the largest HIV/AIDS outpatient clinic in the state. Then I went back to Meharry, director of corporate. Now, then they made me assistant vice president for corporate and foundation relations because 18 months, we got this $9 million gift from the State Farm Insurance Company. They did not want to call it a grant. I said, I don't care what they call it. They call it a cooperative agreement or cooperative agreement. They can call it or whatever. And we started the Meharry State Farm Alliance, where Meharry, well, it was about advocacy and getting African Americans to buckle up seatbelts and stuff like that. And then we were looking at teenagers and elderly white people didn't buckle up because the General Motors Foundation gave me here $100,000 to study the problem. So we had some physicians and faculty in occupational medicine. They did a literature review and they found out that if African Americans buckled up more, saved so many lives, so many in healthcare costs, and so many injuries. So State Farm loved that because we found out later that every time Meharry, the state, worked with State Farm to work with local state legislators to pass primary seatbelt laws, guess what? They saved at least $4 million in claims. They had, actuaries and all of that. So after 3 years, 3 of the first 5 years, the initial funding, we had helped pass primary seatbelt laws with State Farms in 4 states. That's $16 million. So State Farm already got a 6% return on investment. Fast forward, God, that was the second time I worked at Meharry. Then I worked for a small hospice organization and wrote grants for them to start a program around HIV and AIDS. Uh, Came back and I left Meharry then because I wanted to finish my doctorate at Trevecca Nazarene University here. In 100 years, I was the first African American male to get a doctorate from that school. So I got my doctorate education, went back to Meharry as associate VP for corporate and foundation relations. They kept giving me these titles, but they didn't give me no persons to work with hardly. So I finally hired a senior development director. And then after being there 4 years, uh, and going out the door, I worked on a big Robert Wood Johnson Foundation grant they got to start the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Center for Health Policy at Meharry Medical College. Big, like $16 million, huge. So Belmont University was looking for assistant professor of social entrepreneurship. First, I had to look it up. What that means, social entrepreneurship. I said that's what we do all the time. That's how we serve people, underserved, and try to address social problems, things of that nature. So, I got the job for a nationwide search. I came over here in June 1st, 2008. Been here ever since. The first year I was here, uh, the associate dean that was over the master's nonprofit leadership studies and department chair for social work the first year came to me and said, Bernard, we should start a grant write, develop a grant writing. Because I like, no, I don't want to do no grant writing on no collegiate letter. Did the due diligence, and I saw a lot of them did certificate programs, things so we did that. And we've had over 90 students take our grant writing course. All of that, I joined GPA in 2001. Been around all those years. I've been on the board for 4 3-year terms. But even though I'm not in, and I review grants for the federal government, for some regional, southeastern regional providers, philanthropic providers, and here local. But I thought I got all the experience in grant writing. usually a lot of organizations don't not have a lot of grant writing. They got everybody doing, individual major gifts. You can do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to ask Bob for money, but I sure help Bob's daycare center or whatever get a grant. So I just used all of that experience in the world, in the grant professional fields to bring grant writing here. And tell you the truth, a couple of years ago, two students in my class, one of them became development coordinator for March of Dimes, and one of them became development coordinator for an organization called Edu Kenya. They educate Kenyan boys and girls, but they got those jobs because they had taken grant writing. My success story is one, uh, a guy that was in my grant writing class. Then he started a consulting business, and grant writing was a big focus on it. And then he went to work for Souls for Souls, major gift uh, director, major giving director. And then now he's 2 years in, or 3 years in, he's executive director of a local nonprofit. But all of that was because they got grant writing experience. See, people say, oh, fundraising. We understand about people that want to do annual fund and major gifts, but the one thing about being a grant professional, you know. And I'm training myself to say grant professional instead of grant writer, But so excuse me if anybody see this grant professional. One thing about it, like I wrote an article like in 2008 that was in our journal. We get to see the big picture. So I said it was grant professionals as social entrepreneurs. We get to see the big picture. We can't call up a funder and say, can you send us $5,000 donation a day, like you can do an individual alumni. So that's why it's so important, and that's what I try to instill in my students. I believe in experiential learning. They first thing I have them do in that class, I take a local foundation called the First Foundation. They have a technology grant, and so I use that, and I have students write a technology grant for the technology they need to finish their college studies. Now, few years ago, one young lady had in there that she needed her rent paid and stuff like that. So I said, let me tell you all the number one rule. Why your grant proposal failed. You didn't follow the instructions. She learned something for that. We teased her the whole semester about that. But that's how so I continue to do grant writing workshops, basic and advanced, and a faith-based one for our Center for Nonprofit Management. I still review grants locally and the federal government when I'm called upon, and regional. But that's how we have to keep. That's how I keep up. Uh, don't do a lot of federal grants anymore. As a matter of fact, I was doing them for the Center for Nonprofit Management, and I gave it to someone that does a lot of federal grants. She works for our Metropolitan Development Housing Authority. So then she split it into basic and advanced federal grant writing. So, and it's a close knit community. I think we might have 20, 25 members of our local chapter. We are close knit. I refer people to them all the time. I'm not, look, the only thing I want to do in consulting these days is go on, train them, and get out the way, you know? But about 5 years ago, the president of the Center for Nonprofit Management asked me would I do something for Davidson, Metropolitan Davidson, Nashville, Davidson County. I said, okay. They said, no, Bernard, they don't have a lot of money. Anything over $1,000 needs to be approved by the city council. I was like, so I thought along, this is what I do. You write it, and I'll come behind you and critique it and stuff like that. It was a 3 year, 810, 3 years. I think it was 710 or $810,000 from the U.S. Department of Justice. And I think it had something to do with domestic violence and treating police officers, how to do that. So that's my career in a nutshell. I think that one of the things that they need to do is think about a diversity of experience in the field. If you just want to be a grant writer, and I know some people, they just want to be a grant writer, that's fine. But it also leads to bigger and better things. I mean, they can move from being a grant professional or grant writer, they can move to being a development coordinator to other areas. But I think that one of the things, we're the Rodney Dangerfields fundraising anyway. You know, we get a grant. Everybody and the mama want to take credit for it. We don't get it, but now what you do wrong? But you know, we're all of my positions, wherever I've been in terms of when I was a grant writing specialist for United Way, I reported to a director who reported to the president of United Way. So I'm always been one or two steps from the top person. So I think you need to get a variety of things. One of the things, keep getting additional training. Get your GPA, network with GPC. I'm sorry, I get these acronyms mixed. Like get your GPC, but from Gypsy. Come to the conference, but also do additional things for your training. I got a master's in philanthropy and development from St. Mary's University of Minnesota. And I got it in 19, I started in 96 and got it in 1998. And you don't have to you don't have to quit your job. You go up there for like 2 weeks over 3 summers. But they found a niche in the market because I found a chronicle of philanthropy. So do things of that nature. And then when you look for jobs that's gonna leverage your skills, you got these grant writing skills. So look for the next job and see if that's you can use those skills. You're always gonna use those skills, but build upon that skill set. And then that way I don't think you would get burnout. And a lot of people do consulting full time, but you can always do it on a part time basis. And people say, well, where would I start? I said, well, you can start, but just volunteering with an organization. Not say you're going to write all their grants because they'll try to get you to do that, but volunteer with an organization that you like, get on a board, and then take it from there. That way, I don't think you get burnt out because if you're just sitting there, and we all know when we're writing, sometimes we have to write in our own little bubble, but I always bring other people along as well. Because somebody want me to come in and write a grant form, the first thing I want to do is talk to the people on the ground, the ones that doing the direct services, because they are the ones that usually people don't ask. But as a grant professional, we got to work collaboratively with all across programs, development, and everybody else. So that's one way you don't get burnt out. Create your own circle of colleagues. It don't have to be a big circle. It could be 3 to 5 people that you can call on. I've always had people in development I could call on. I had one person, she's a development officer for alumni, and then she was annual fund before that. And I was like, I can't do your work because if Dr. So-and-so that got a C in chemistry 20 years ago, get over it. That's what I was saying. Come on, get his money. That's why I want to deal with that. And plus, the grant profession is a unique field. I tell everybody it's a specialty field. And I'm not trying to be funny and downgrade anything else, but look, if you are a major gift person or you're doing annual fund, and that's where a lot of people start in development as annual fund. A lot of people don't start as grant writers. Some of them, I know somebody went from marketing and now she's in development doing grants and she loves it because she can see how her marketing background complements what we do in grant writing because it's all about brand and selling. hmm Advice I tell people say, oh, you got to get to know the funders and things of that nature. You need to collaborate and get to know the other organizations that's doing what you're doing. When I was the director of development for the Comprehensive Care Center, uh, I was on the board of an organization called Mental Health Association, and when we wrote our federal grant to get funding, matter of fact, we got $400,000 for 3 years. They had applied for that federal funding 5 years ago, 5 years before, and didn't get it. Now they still get that funding, and it's $675,000 a year. But I was on the board of Mental Health Association here in town, and we put mental health in our budget because we knew that we needed that. And so our first $400,000, they got $50,000 a year for 3 years. I think that also was my board contribution, get or give. Well, I got that for them. Okay, so it's things like that. Yeah. I tell everybody, my brother said to me one time, you got a master's in begging for money. You know, and I'm like, what do you mean? He said, don't you beg for money? You write them grants, aren't you begging for money? I said, yeah, but you got the wrong thing. It's an honorable profession. Look how GPA has grown. You know, I was you know, we don't use them anyway. I was member number 201 in 1991. It's I think people have to love what they're doing. I will always be uh, committed to the grants professional because that's how I got my start.